So, please start.
Okay, thank you so much. And nice to meet you, all of you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so actually, it might be a little bit difficult for someone, when asked to talk about something, a kind of opposite or contradiction like this. But to me, I think that because I studied pragmatism with William James, and I found something interesting, the way to look at religion, based on his concept of truth, and that's what I would like to propose. So I think that in order to avoid the conflict of teaching of talking about something opposite, something contradictory like this, like a Theism and Buddhism, maybe if you look at how to perceive truth for William James, it might be a better option. So it might be some kind of contribution to the understanding of ism, particularly ism in religion. Okay, so this is my topic. I would like to talk about 3 topics. The first one is about metaphysical basis. So when you look at the concept of ultimate reality in both Theism and Buddhism. The second, we move from metaphysical basis to ethical perspective, which cover the ideal goal of life and religious practice or religious means to achieve the goal. And the third one is the application of pragmatism to religious belief. So start from metaphysical basis. If you look at Theism and Buddhism, to me, I use the word that seems to be a strong word, like they have a contradictory metaphysical basis. When we look at the reality, ultimate reality of both, such as Theism, like they believe in God as a creator. Like in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, you might be able to help because I think that you know quite a lot about this.
Maybe on Islam or something.
Yeah, but it's actually the same group, including Hinduism in Indian belief. Basically, they believe in whatever theistic ideas. I cover all one God. You believe in one God, or you believe in many gods. You believe in abstract God, the big God or small God, or even in Kami in Shinto. This one I'm thinking about it because I have a book on whole about Shinto. But I think that when you believe in spirits or gods, relatively, it might be categorized as theistic ideas. I'm not sure about that, but I just put it here because it's different from Buddhism. Buddhism has no God as creator. So that's why I put a contradiction between the ultimate reality when theistic group look at the ultimate reality, and why Buddhism accept no God as creator, but they still accept some kind of small gods. I call small god, it's like a small g, or deities. But deities here is not something permanent. It's a kind of, it's one dimension of beings still being born and get enlightenment later. So more or less, it's like how to look at reality in Buddhism is quite different or contradiction to theistic ideas. So that's what I saw from the metaphysical basis. Because in Buddhism, the world is naturally formed or created, not by God as the creator or by someone outside nature. So it's appeared it's explained in the Tripitaka, the scripture itself, as everything must be in the natural process, starting from something either good or bad, it doesn't matter, and later on is changing and becoming and dissolved later. It's not like something permanent. Even human beings is a part of nature too. So the creator as like a big God, as a creator, they deny that. And okay, so that's the idea of metaphysical basis. If you want to say anything, please do it on the way. No problem with me. Yeah.
I think one God almost accept God as a creator, but the polytheism, like Hinduism, there are many creators.
How about polytheism, like in Greek?
The creation in Hinduism is a kind of myth, so it's something different. It's not done just by one God. It can't be done by just one God.
Many gods are not.
Even in Christianity, the difference is that we have this metaphysical God, but the core is that it's becoming through incarnation the human being. So the real thing what we have to think about is the perspective of the human being. That is related, but that's the difference to Judaism and Islam. In Islam, where we have this absolute transcendency. So there's no link between God and the human being. And Christianity is the opposite, because human being and God.
And
that's because incarnation and that everyone can go on to be. That's then the difference between the Christian ways. Orthodox believe that human beings are becoming like God, we call it theosis, and Protestants think that they must be justified by God. But anyway, it's always a link between the human being and God. So the interest of Christians is the way of life, and not the question of God. And that's the difference to Islam. In Islam, we have this transcendent God. You can't really reach him. The only possibility is that he orders how to act. So the moral way of action, that's Islam. Then I am a Muslim when I do the good things.
Yes.
Because it's ordered by God. So it's very different. All of them are very different. But I think in general I would agree because this is what, especially in the past, even in Buddhism we have to be careful. But I'm not a Buddha knowledge, but the Bodhisattvas are.
I would ask you.
Sorry, I should stop. Sorry, you are right.
Could you tell me the difference between? You said the difference between Christianity and Judaism is incarnation.
Yes.
But then, what the difference between Judaism and Islam?
Do you have any idea about Judaism?
Sorry?
Judaism.
Yes. Of course,
I guess so.
The main difference between them, what is that?
It's not so easy as it is between Judaism and Christianity and Islam, because Judaism and Islam has both a strong impact on moral way of life. Well, they do this with Torah and for Muslim. But Judaism, besides the Torah, has this expectation of Messiah or whatever. So they have this idea that there will be contact between earth and heaven. Already the kingdom of God starts with Judaism, the pilgrimage to the Zion and those things. And Islam never had this. In Islam it's totally impossible that there is an interaction between heaven and earth. So the only thing we have is that the Quran was fallen down to Muhammad, but there is not a real interaction between heaven and earth as it is in Christianity, very substantial.
Oh, thank you so much. I had only one course in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. That's one course. This is the way to remind me of the thing that I studied before. Thank you so much.
Can I repeat my question? Many gods in polytheism are creators.
I'm not sure about that.
No.
I think it's a kind of development.
No,
it's like in Hinduism.
Sorry?
In Hinduism.
But they create only something. For example, they are the creator of the evil, they are the creator of whatever. So no one is doing the whole creation. As far as I know, I'm not a specialist in Hinduism, but so.
That each god has his own duty, obligation to create something.
Yes.
But as a whole, they still believe in Brahman. And I think it's a kind of development from like many gods or one god and abstract gods or something like that. But it's a kind of like a long time development according to their history. But later on they have like a trinity, like three gods in one.
Yes, but even there in Hinduism, but I'm not a specialist in Hinduism. I think we have to think about if this is really so much focused on the question of God. Yes, they have a lot of gods, but in reality it's more the way of life.
Yeah.
So it's the purification, it's the karma, how it's the question of how to be a good person so that in the new life you have a good position. So it's when you do this, it's always when we try to have something where we can say some very general ideas, but it's always, I think then this differentiation is a little bit tricky because it brings on the Buddhist side the way of life, and on all the other religions it brings transcendence or whatever.
Yeah, in terms of the basis, the metaphysical basis, how to look at the world, the reality, it seems to be, I use a strong word like a contradiction, but the next slide is not like this.
Okay, and perhaps you should not interact too much.
Do you know the translation? I think that they understand.
understand.
No, they understand. Yeah. Okay.
And just one comment. As far as I know, if I understand correctly, in Hinduism, even gods are the creatures, right? The gods are created by Brahma. In the beginning of this world, there was a sound like Om. And this sound created the world.
Yeah, but later on, that's why I say it's a kind of development or evolution in the concept of gods.
So in Hinduism, gods are not creators. They are.
How about the Brahman? Brahman is the
It's a concept. It's a concept. In the
That is
beginning,
abstract.
there was a chaos, and there was a sound. Om, and then
things happen.
But even in Christianity, we have this in the beginning is the chaos, and then there's a voice, and so on. So I think if perhaps we should be careful to discuss it too early because I can understand what you mean by this difference. But in every of these religions, I would have the doubts if these are only, or if they are really so much focused on God, or is it's more the other side. They need God to interpret the way of life, but not. Let me see what
Okay,
we
let's
do about Buddhism.
in Christianity, there was nothing before God, wasn't it?
Oh yes, it was. It was. We have no idea what was. We only know that it was chaos.
It was just nothing.
Oh no, in Genesis 1, it said in Hebrew, Bereshit bara Elohim v'hashamayim v'ha'aretz. So in the beginning, Bereshit bara, in the beginning, God is creating, but the substance was already there, and it was chaos.
Well, even the concepts of time and space are the creatures of God.
It's all done. That's all done. That's true. But we have, we have two very different creations. Yes, one is given in the Jewish tradition by the priest, so we call it the priest scripture. The other one is done by the Deuteronomics school. It's more on law, so it's and they have some contradictions. So we not just have one story about creation. This is just when you are looking from outside, but if you're looking from inside, from Jewish tradition, you see they have very different ways of explaining creator. Anyway.
Yeah, but I think that the origin of the universe is similar in many religions. It's even in Buddhism, when they talk about, except no God as a creator, they talk about the same situation, some kind of chaotic or chaos. And after that, it's like probably by the the interaction among people or beings, we can use the word beings, and that bring up the society and the kingdom and whatever later. So that's probably almost the same, the chaotic situation. And then later on it's just changing, becoming to something else, and that's...
Just to say, the idea of creation is a Jewish idea, and the Christians just took it over. The only thing the Christian added to the idea of creation is John 1, that is that the Logos, that means Christ, is doing the creation. But that's the only thing the Christians are doing in addition. So they just went with the Jewish way of explaining how the world is coming into being, because for the Christians it was not of importance. It was not so much important how the world came into being. For the Christians it's more the way of life. The question today is the day you have to act. That's the question of the Christians.
It's
okay.
It's eschatology, that puts emphasis on creation.
Okay, so let's move to this part.
Yes.
You can have a lot of things to talk. Actually, I'm not the one who try to, I just try to raise some questions or just give some ideas. And then this is normal in my philosophy department, you know. So it's just like, okay, we invite someone to talk. Ajahn Taro was invited many times. And then we try to pose some question, and then student and the audience try to argue, to think at the same time. Okay, so it's not like some other places that they just let the speaker talk until from the beginning to the end. It's not fun.
I would love to change my chair with yours.
Yeah, they said I should present. Yeah, I do, but okay. So the ethical perspective is from metaphysical basis. That's the way we started. But later on, when in terms of the ethical perspective or ethical basis, I use the word differences. In this case, I think about two sub-categories of ethical perspective. One, we talk about ideal goal of life, and this one is different. I did not say including the other topics too. I use the word differences because in Christianity you have this one, and this is just one the example. And for Buddhism, this is the ideal goal of life, accepted, like a generally accepted. One is like a little bit transcendental, higher. But even though you have Jesus to link the God and human, but for Buddhism, each person has to strive for nirvana themselves. I would like to mention Shinto because it's my topic of writing right now, but I am still not get a clear idea about when Shinto think about the ideal goal of life. Even though the beginning I put in the theistic group, in terms of Shinto believe in kami or spirit, right? But their focus is not on the transcendental world, but something here. And why I say that? Because we link it to the religious practice or religious means. You set up the ideal goal of life, which might be different. So religious means or practice as a means to achieve that goal is quite different. It depends on each faith, each belief. But altogether, generally, it shows the interactive process between the thing that you believe existing. Ideally or really, that is the way each person think about it, each group. But so far, if you look at the ideal goal of life and religious means, I think that I don't use the word contradiction because this one is just different from each other. Some might be similar, some might be different. So when you talk about Christianity, you think that Christianity pay more attention to the way of life?
I think so, yes.
Mm.
I think the question for Christians is how the Christian can be in unity with God. That's the main question.
Yeah.
If he is live his life according to God,
Yes.
so if he is in the steps of Christ, then it's okay. If
Yeah.
not, then it's not okay. So it's not so much a question of metaphysics because we don't really know what will be there.
Yeah, that's fine.
We only know we have to reach for. So that we can't limit our goals to what is on earth. It must be something that is more than just can be seen.
So it's like in this perspective, when you think about the ethical perspective, these two isms just have something different, and they have their own practice, they have their own object of worship, something that you believe is exists somewhere, or even in this life, in this world, like a Shinto and Kami. They never mention, even though they have a kind of mythology from the god, the goddess. But later on, people walk by the Shinto shrine, they just worship, they pray, and the thing that they ask for blessing from God, from the Kami self, each shrine. And that is, I think that is just for our life in this world. So if you don't belong to Buddhism, you don't belong to Christianity or nothing, just plain Shinto. So this world is the world that you work, you die, you get something you get blessing from Kami, and then if something happened to you, you just go back and give something to that shrine, the Shinto shrine, like a Fushimi Inari in Kyoto, something like that. So the ideal goal of life is quite different. Kingdom of God is one, Nirvana is another. But for Shinto, I think that this is the way.
Sorry, but Kingdom of God and Nirvana is not the idea of life. I have no idea about Buddhism, but for Christians I can say Kingdom of God is the expectation of what might be the future, and we don't really know. We just know that then Christ says it's already here today.
Exactly.
It's not in the future, it's
Exactly.
just today.
When I say ideal goal of life, it is something that you expect, but it might not be. You might,
If you expect to be happy in harmony and so, and if you look to Shinto, no, also you are, because this is the way, you are always on the way.
Yeah.
So you just get the things on a fluent way, you will have it never complete. That's, that's the non-Christian way of thinking.
Yeah.
But I think the difference you create is not so deep as you believe. Even I have no real idea about Shintoism, but when I see it starts with these rituals to purify yourself with these water things, and so at the end, I think even Shintos believe that that they can go on to have a more clear life than without too much burdens, right?
I'm not sure about next life in Shinto.
No next life. We don't have it.
Just this
in
life.
Christianity, even next life is nothing like that we know.
But
so
even
we just know this life.
This life, yeah, but I'm not sure about that because I kept reading right now. But so far, including observing people and talking to those people, who might not have the idea of Buddhism or some other religion, just being Shinto. But they never mention anything transcendental. Everything that they do it for this life. This is correct.
This is a possibility, I hope, in more or less all religions. You can do these things without transcendence. You can do it with transcendence, but also without. Even in Christianity, you can speak about this idea that God is death. And we have a whole theology that is discussing this idea that God died, or whatever. So I think, I'm not sure why you are so much interested to create this difference. I'm not so sure why you try to create
Oh.
or to establish this difference.
Something different? Because later on it seems to be similar.
Just one comment.
Oh.
I think the point of divergence between Christianity and other religion is the concept of sin. Sin.
Ah.
And in Christianity, the main topic or the main theme in terms of life is the salvation from the sin, the original sin. And that's very typical in the practice of Catholicism, like in Catholic Church, people go to the church and they confess, and then the Father forgive them, right?
But the understanding of sin is also very different between Protestants and Catholics.
Yes.
For Protestants, it's mainly that you don't believe. So that's the impossibility for human beings to believe. So that's the sin for Luther. The original sin is nothing you did wrong things or something like that. It's mainly that you are not able to believe because you are a human being and human beings are not able to have a full knowledge. Not knowledge of that in English. I think this.
Okay.
Something like wisdom, but it's not really wisdom. I have not the right English word.
No, I mean when I use the word ideal aim of life or ideal goal of life, this is like a kind of wording that we use in ethics, like in ethics, in philosophy. And basically we have the two main topics under ethics. One, ideal goal of life. It's like if you want to be hedonistic person, that is your ideal goal of life, something like that. Or utilitarianism, or whatever, something like religious belief. And then we have the means to achieve that. So that's why I use these two words. Just the word that we use commonly used in philosophy. But when I say this is different because depend on each person, each faith. But when it comes to practice, conduct, I think that they share many values at the practical level, like in everyday life. Like in Christianity, you might pay attention to charity, to love, like a love of God, love of human beings. In Buddhism also, we have the concept of love. We might call it differently in the original language, but the concept of mercy or compassion and some other good values that make your life better spiritually or physically. I think that all of these, all ism have something in common. So that's the idea. And that's why this is practical, at a practical level, like a conduct, not something ideal. So I would like to talk about, when I mention this one because I will bring it to the pragmatic theory of truth and the application to when we look at religions. So I start from something contradiction, something different, something similar. And after that, if I will go to pragmatic theory of truth, and I think that Professor Ili might be able to help even though you don't study something like a classic pragmatism, but you study something like a neo-pragmatism, something new. After William James, I have some books on logic, but probably just go through it and not deeply study. My life is done with classic, everything classic. Okay?
I'm sorry. Could you explain the conduct, ethical conduct? What does
You
it mean?
did something in everyday life. Morality.
Ethical action?
Like
Activity?
something like that. When you just really do it in your life. Not something that you expect or something that you think is supposed to be. That's why I just put it separate. Like something, like in terms of ethical perspective or ethical basis, it might be something that you expect and you might achieve it one day or not, or the other life, come back. Like in Buddhism, you come back. You have to be reborn because you get nothing done this life. So something is like ideally. But this one, when we just look at people in everyday life situation, I think that they show all of this. If they are real Christian, real Muslim, or even real Buddhist, or even Shinto, that's why. So this is the thing that happened. So after that, I would like to bring it to the William James concept of truth, because this is based on the book entitled Pragmatism, and the other one is the concept of truth. And this book is William James' Varieties of Religious Experience. So I think that actually this book originally is written before the other two books. He started his idea. I mean, he worked as a psychologist before turning to a philosopher. And this one, he just got so many testimonies from people around him, and they try to say something about the ideas of religious belief or faith that they have. But in his pragmatism, when he talked about concept of truth, he changed the concept of how to gain knowledge. Truth in Taro Sensei might be able to explain better because he studied epistemology. But the concept of truth in pragmatism is totally different from the classic Plato, Descartes, Kant, Immanuel Kant, something like that, you know. So because he tried not to explain anything transcendental, and it's like a world of form is the source of knowledge, or in Kant's Lumina, something that like a very ultimate reality, and we don't know what it is. Like you said before, it's like we don't know what it is. But in terms of like a Plato's the world of form, that is the source of knowledge. And Plato believed that we can reach that world, the world of form. But for William James, it seems that he tried not to explain all of these things. But instead, he emphasizes the world, this actual world, where we live, where we work and die. It's like an empirical world that we have seen each other. And truth is not something transcendental. This is like a truth in general. It's something that you perceive here, you got it here, something in this world. So that's the concept of truth in general. And so I put some animation. So in this case, what he mentioned is truth is more practical. It's something practical. It's something that leads to practical results. Sorry. So when we talk about practical results, so this is the main concept. Satisfaction and efficiency gained from the practical. The practice is for the concept that you have. So if you think that something true, that thing you must bring it into practice in everyday life and observe the result. So if that ideas give you the satisfaction and efficiency, you can accept it as true. So the truth for James is totally different or opposite to Plato's, to something like a Descartes, to Kant. So that's the idea of functional truth. He called functional or practical truth or workable truth. So it's a process. It's not something static. So if you think about concept of world of idea or world of form or credo is something static. It's something like it's there, and you try to understand. But for him, for William James, he said that caused a lot of problem because in the history of philosophy, as we know, they have arguments about ultimate reality, about truth, about so many things, because we just talk about it theoretically, not practically. We never say, when we argue about, let's say like Descartes just mentioned something, like something innate ideas, and it's more theoretical, it's not practical. So James said, if you want to prove that idea, bring it into practice and observe the result, something that happened to your life. And this kind of truth, it doesn't matter. It includes everything. It's just like a theoretical knowledge, and as well as religious, moral concept, moral truth, or even religious truth. He brought everything into at an empirical level. His work. So that's the idea of truth for
I
him.
think this concept of practical truth does not necessarily apply to moral things, but also
Everything.
Everything. Right?
Sensible and something intangible, something like a moral ideas or religious ideas, which is
even in a case like when you solve a mathematical
oh
problem.
yeah.
If you have a concept of truth very theoretical, if you have the concept of theoretical truth, you try to prove, right? But if you have this concept of practical truth, maybe you experiment, right?
Yeah, that's why.
It's rather experimental truth.
Yeah, that is the same. Do we call it instrumental?
Instrumental.
But this is the original word that he used.
But I think it's really a little bit end of 19th, early 20th century. It's very much linked to a given truth. I think truth is an illusion. It's not existing. It's not just created because we need something to live with. So
Exactly.
we think that we can trust in them. So what is truth and reality in our life will be always a result of our discussions of our way of life.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's impossible to prove truth. The only way to prove truth is limited in our way of life.
Yeah.
And when you present it like this, that we can prove truth, that
Yes.
I think it's still in the shadow of the old systems of the 19th century. And it's not really this way we today want to discuss fluent ideas and ideas coming by just what is coming by our way of life. So I'm even not sure if we can have such a concept of truth. Because this concept of truth, how you explained it or how you introduced it, it's more or less just depending on the old idea of truth. It tells something in contradiction to the old ideas of truth, but it's not yet a new idea. It's just how I should say it. Perhaps I think you are right. It's not just to do experiments, or you said it, to do experiments. But this would be not. I think it's even if I do experiments, then I have the idea that there is something like the truth.
Oh, you use big
But it's
truth?
never there. It's
No.
just an illusion.
No.
Well, actually, it's the nature of science. In science, there is no truth. In science, everything is probable. Things are not certain. There is no 100%
Yes.
certainty.
Yes.
But everything is 99.999.
Yes, I agree totally.
Yeah, we
Yes.
accept that.
And if someone tells the opposite,
Yeah.
for me it's ideology.
Yeah. So actually,
It's
even
not
it's
religion, it's
probability, we can accept that.
So everything is refutable.
For William James, the only way to have that kind of truth, I mean this kind of truth, you experiment. So that's why he's inclined to the scientific method, because he said at least we can prove it in our life, and even though it gives you not 100% true idea, truth, like truth, like
the truth means a very high probability.
yeah, just high probability, and it works. The problem if that idea works in your life. So this one, so it's a process. Once in the process of 1, 2, and the third one is something that he would like to add it here. I'm just okay, so something like this. So that idea, when you talk about functional, workable, practical, it's a process. You started something, but why is a process? So if you don't have any problem, you don't need anything, right? You just live as usual. But once you have some problems, you have to fix it, and that's true stuff. True idea, you have to collect so many ideas, and then you can test each idea into, you bring it into practice and you test it if it works to solve that problem or not. And the second one, whatever you have, it should lead to better ideas, constructively, not destructively. And that includes something, one thing that I did not mention is the experience. They said it's like when you talk about world of form or whatever, innate idea or Descartes, we don't pay attention to human experience. It's just real theory, right? But this truth, because it's about us, about each person. So in that case, the way you think about it, the way you taste it, the way you do about it, it includes your life or experience, present experience, and you expect something maybe new experience. And if all of this lead to a better life, you can accept that. So in this case, that's why when pragmatism, when William James look at truth, it's not up there, but it's somewhere here, this world. And that's why I put this, this is the contradiction. It's like the opposite. I don't have the word opposite. I borrow this one. But this is different from Descartes, from Plato, from someone idealistic philosophers. So this is the idea. And then when you look at religion, this one can be applied to all concepts, to all aspects of life, moral, empirical, whatever that happened to you, you can apply this concept. And including religious belief. So if when you look at the religious belief, I should put this one before. This is his works, his main works. Actually, when in the varieties of religious experience that is, I would like to say in this seminar, it's written before pragmatism and the meaning of truth, several years before. After all, I would like to talk about William James' work a little bit. I think that because he personally is a very religious person, Christian, very religious Christian. And because when you are very much religious, so when we talk about philosophy, basically we have to talk about it like rationally, not with faith, but with reason. So I think that the other two books were written to support his religious ideas. It comes out much later. And so based on the varieties of experience, he said religion is something related to individual spiritual needs and ideology, not institutionalized, not ideally religious experience, not universal, religious experience is just something that happened to each person individually. So this is another idea. Why when we had a conversation, an argument about like a metaphysical basis? Because we talk about religions like a universally, generally, like as a religion, Christianity, as Buddhism, but we don't talk about a Buddhist or a Christian. So that's the problem when we look at religion that way. And most people, because I have I don't want to say it here, but some of my monk students often say that I don't believe in God. I said, I agree, no problem with me. So God doesn't exist. I said, that is not right. Because he is Buddhist, he's a monk actually. So he said, no God in Buddhism. I said, no problem. Because the Pragmatic says so. But when you say God doesn't exist, that it doesn't exist because you don't believe it. But if people who believe it, God exists. Normal. It's normal. Because you believe it, it exists for you. It doesn't exist for the others. So I think that you have to look at religion this way. And I think that William James tried to say something like, it's individual. It's kind of individual experience. Maybe relatively mystic, but it shows something, the interaction between that practitioner and something high power or something. I don't know to say. Because in this book, he talked about the reality of the unseen. He doesn't use the word God. I mean, in other chapters, he used the word God because he got a collection of testimonies, and those people use the word God. But in the chapter, the reality of the unseen, he used the word unseen. Something that people might believe differently, even contradiction. But that is just for each person, not for some other people. So the unseen for Christian might be God, the unseen for Hindu, the Hindi might be Brahman, or the unseen for Buddhist is Nirvana, something like that. And he said, okay, he accepts that this kind of experience cannot be done with logical thinking, but at least it shows some connection between something that you can perceive directly, individually.
What about the fact that religious practices are always collective practice? Religious practices are always collective.
Collective.
Collective or connected?
It's like as a group.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but think about it, you can join the group. But actually, though, I used to argue like this with my professors, my advisors, actually, when I wrote a thesis. And later on, he said, Pratoom, but if you want to convert a lot of people, you have to go to a group. We cannot do it like each individual. It wastes time.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of another thing. If you go to a country like Brunei, drinking alcohol is 100% prohibited, right?
Yeah, but that
They
is...
don't sell beers, they don't sell alcohol.
Yeah, but that is might be a kind of religious conduct, right? Or it's like, I don't know if it's put in the doctrine for
In Muslim
no alcoholic drink in Muslim countries.
Yes, it's from the very beginning. It's even when they started in the Zen Center, we have that alcohol is forbidden. But still, at the same time, we have a lot of traditions where alcohol was influential, especially in Iranian movements. So when you have Rumi and Hafiz especially was a friend of wine, even mystical, but also. So it then depends how you go with this moral.
It's like a moral imperative. But
we have it also in Christianity in general for Reformed Christians. So there is alcohol is forbidden, playing cards is forbidden, dancing is forbidden. So, but this is always a question of standards in a certain group. So even in Islam, you can dispute it.
No, but when I talk about when you talk about collective, I understand. But the experience itself, the religious experience itself, it's just between you and something up there.
I rather think it's something related to social needs.
Yeah, that comes later. Yeah, it comes later. I mean, so as a group, you might have some kind of common belief together or common conduct. But for William James, every single person has its own. It's like you perceive this thing and you understand some, but it's more individual. Something like that.
I think it's really two sides of the coin. So,
Uh-huh.
on the one hand, I think it's totally clear what James says, and there are a
Yeah.
lot of practices for the Orthodox prayer of the heart, or what just done by the individual. It's impossible to do it with other people together. And on the other hand, the Ummah for the Muslims or the church for the Christians, it's always a collective.
Yeah, that's true.
Others, and then you have individuals
Mhm,
doing with an
mhm,
idea, and then the interaction
Yeah.
creates
Yeah.
this.
No, it's like I have a friend, she is Catholic, but she denied the church, I mean to go to the church, like a collectively. I said, you cannot be a Catholic if you don't go to church and join the other people's group. You might be protested, like you and God directly, something like that. She said, no, because she is like a kind of ritual, like Catholic ritual before, since she was born. But later she had that idea. She said, I believe in God, but like a more individual, like a mystic, something like that, you know.
But even if it's in that such an individualistic way, we have in Europe, for example, Kierkegaard. He's very famous for this individual way of thinking religion. But at the end, you need something to interact. You need somebody to have a mirror of yourself. Otherwise, you are going into fiction.
Partly, that might be the the collective gathering. I think that partly, it might be a kind of mission to spread their religion, spread out their religion, like to get people disseminate information, like religious information to others, to expand the group, something like that.
But
No.
this is already very ideological,
No, but-
you know? I would more understand, but it's a way how to think about it.
So that's the way I interpret
If they
it.
want to share.
The social movement, but yeah, but collectively, like the Taro sensei said, it might be they want to share some experience
Yes,
together.
yes. Because as long as you want to share, that's peaceful and all.
Yeah.
But if you start to convince others this is the way,
Yeah, but they have to do it collectively too. So
both is collectively.
yeah, but at the beginning, but William James still pay attention to the individual experience.
Yes.
And in that case, so he said, religious experience consists of three main elements. First, object of belief, consciousness of feeling of the unseen, and the reaction, I say interactive process toward it. So these combined that cause people's religious experience. You have your own belief, you have your own feeling or consciousness of that thing, and you have the action toward it. And so that becomes something that you call faith. So faith is, to me, to him, is comparatively like, he said very clear, it's like a hypothesis, like a scientific hypothesis. When you started to do some kind of experiment, you set up the hypothesis and you try to prove it, you try to test it. And if you observe its result, so it's exactly like a scientific method, scientific experiment, but except it's a kind of religious faith. It's not like something that you test it or you experiment in the lab, but it's the same. So he said, if that hypothesis doesn't work, it means doesn't give you the result, satisfactory result efficiency as expected, you can throw that away, no problem. So if you take whatever ideas, religious ideas into action, so it should bring you something benefits. Otherwise, it doesn't work in your life. How can you keep it? So, and that's why I said you have to react to that thing yourself. Nobody can help you, even society. But if they want to do it like collectively, it might be some other reasons, but not for this reason. This reason you have to do it yourself, and you test it, and you observe its result. So this is his idea of religious faith. And so if you think about it like a hypothesis, something that happened in everyday life. So this is his idea in the varieties of religious experience. And I think that maybe next slide is going to be the last one.
Just a minute. The religious experience is the same as a faith. A faith is a kind of religious experience.
It's like you have something you believe, and you have religious experience, and then later it's like you have faith in something like that.
A faith is the second.
Consciousness of the unseen. If you see the detail, it might be that one. I mean, in particular, the object of unseen, the object of belief is the unseen, and the consciousness of the unseen is something that happened to you individually, and then you have the reaction toward that. So it's like in Shinto, when you walk by the jinja, the shrine, you pray. You must have something involving between you and the kami, even though you've never seen kami at all. You know, when I walk by the jinja, I kept trying looking for the kami. But that is the beginning, like 30 years ago, the first time I came here.
So
And
in
then,
the context, what is the reaction towards it?
yeah, you have something, you just don't believe it, and then you feel it, and you don't do nothing. You pray, you do some ritual, you get something done. I mean, no one knows, but that is a kind of interactive process. Something, you might have a strong feeling toward that the unseen, as strong as something like something that happened in daily life. It's like you love someone. That is the kind of feeling, that consciousness is as strong as you have a religious belief. So that's the way he explained. But you cannot just believe it. You have to bring it into practice. You have to do it. Whatever. It's not like most people will say that they are Buddhist. Why? Because you believe in the Buddha. You believe in the Dharma. And that's it. That is not religious person in William James. Because you don't do anything. You just believe it. And once something happens, you don't bring that Buddhist belief, Buddhist doctrine, whatever you have in mind, to solve your problem in daily life. When you are very poor, most people in Buddhism, they might complain that, oh, because I have a bad karma. But why don't you think about present karma? If you believe in Buddhism, you have to look to the Buddhist concept, bring it into practice. You have to work hard. You have to do so many things. You cannot just blame the past karma, which we don't know what it is. We just take for granted that we have bad karma.
But this situation where the things are not done is more or less only because you don't know that the source these things are coming from are always an interactive process. Always
Intellectual, yeah.
So I think it's more that who are a little bit separated from the origin, and what you then are telling is to bring back the religious experience, because all of these religions and all these practices are coming because of religious experiences and because of experimental ways. It was never just a metaphysical act. It's not Greek philosophy. Greek philosophy is a little bit different, and we can discuss what Greek philosophy and religion has to do with each other. But all these ways you speak about, they are religious experience from the very beginning. So if someone just has the idea and do nothing, then it means he lost the connection with the spring he's coming from. That's the only thing I
It's like you separate yourself from that thing. And that's why I use the word, probably his word, interactive process. I mean, from the beginning of the concept of truth, it's interactive process. And I think that I finished my talking with, one more, two more. Okay, here. This is the way to test it. If you find something valuable from that idea, and it's good for your life, so once you have some consciousness of faith, he said it's not useless hypothesis. Most people often think, I don't know, for people in the modern time, they might think that we don't need religion, something like that. But he said if it leads to efficient and satisfactory results for each person, but he mentioned like each person individual, something like that. But if you try to, at least if you have something like the unseen, it can be a source of inspiration to make your life better in this world. That is the concept of religion for that person. So when he look at the religious belief, I think that is he tried to bring it down to earth instead of some kind of heaven or something transcendental. And you can prove it in your life. So that's why I said once it's fun to me, you know, after I changed completely from philosophy to something like a religion, but I still have some kind of metaphysical, philosophical basis when I look at all of these things. So I think it's fun. Even though I like observing, that's why I asked if you study anthropology, because you said, I like observing people, so you go to the meditation center in Thailand, to the temple, just to observe. Basically, that's the way I do when I came here. Whenever I came here, when I walk by, sometimes I just look, why did that lady pray so long, like a half an hour in front of the jinja, the shrine? So it might be something between her and something unseen. And they have some kind of reaction. And this is my concluding presentation. I don't know, if we look at the pragmatism, pragmatic method in religion, at least I think that we can have something simple. Something simple that we don't think about it. I don't like when people talk about religion and they try to have a kind of conflict or try to argue or quarrel each other because of just the metaphysical basis different. That's it. It's like a God, no God. I say, I have no idea because this is the way I look at religion. Because personally, I study many religions, and if I don't try to be objective or try to think about something that can help, I might get trapped like others. Because most people often think that their religion is the best. I often say, yes, it's the best for you. Yeah, it's the best for you. So I think that maybe people might, if they try to think about religion from this view, pragmatism, people would appreciate their own faith with reason, not just faith with faith or logical. It should be some kind of reason, and they should reduce their bias toward the others. And byproduct is number 3, minimize conflict. and maximize human welfare as a collective. So if each person try to understand something like this, collectively, I think that the world would be better. In pragmatism, he never used the word best. Because if something best, the best, it means it's done. You cannot change it, anything. But he said everything would be better. Your life would be better. Even though when you have a hypothesis, like religious hypothesis, you test it, it comes out like a scientific experiment, probably. But can you accept it if you solve the problem religiously and you get only 60%, 80%, probably true? That's the same as in experiment, scientific experiment. They might accept it, maybe 80%. That's the way I look at the religion. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much.